Good morning. I'm Jason Siwula with the Transportation Cabinet. I'm the Deputy State Highway Engineer for Project Development, and here to talk to you about the TSMO program plan, which is something that I've been working on in conjunction with the Division of Planning, Steve DeWitt, a whole group of stakeholders that I'll get to and acknowledge in a few minutes, and WSP and a few other consultant partners as well. And so really excited to be here talking about the TSMO program plan. When we look at TSMO, there's a lot of great opportunities there for strategic alignment. I just want to ask, so who in here has never heard the term TSMO? Or if I wrote down on if I told you right on a piece of paper what TSMO means, you look at me and go, I'm not sure. And that's okay. I mean, it may even be me. Okay, thank you. So we're going to talk a little bit about what TSMO is, what TSMO isn't. We're going to talk a little bit about KYTC and how it fits within our strategic plan, how it aligns with the things that we do at the Transportation Cabinet, and ultimately, at the end, I'm gonna ask for some help. So if you don't want to be asked for help, it would be good to leave before the end. So just wanted to let you know. But I've already taken mental attendance. So without further ado, would definitely ask that folks that are joining us online, please make sure that you're safely doing that, not while driving or anything like that. Be more than happy to talk to you about this at a different time as well, if that's what you were planning on doing during this hour block. So let's talk a little bit about our strategic plan and strategic alignment. If you're a member of KYTC, this document will look familiar to you. And if you've seen any presentations recently by members of the State Highway Engineer's Office, you've probably heard us talk about one or more of these things. I'm not going to go through this document and read it to you in its entirety, but what I'll tell you is that when we look at TSMO, and specifically, TSMO stands for Transportation Systems Management and Operations. And when we look at TSMO, it has very strong alignment across not only our values, but our goals at KYTC. This is an exciting time to be looking at some of these TSMO strategies that we'll be discussing and to be implementing a TSMO program plan, because there's a lot of opportunities there to do things that we've either not been able to work through before, or that we are able to look at in a different way and support in a different way from KYTC. So, the number one question about TSMO over the last several years is, well, what is a TSMO anyway? And, I kind of looked blankly back and, maybe asked the consultant to answer, but I think I've got a good answer now. So we'll cover this a little bit over the next few slides. So when you think about TSMO, easy for me to think about it kind of like a toolbox, okay? So when we talk about TSMO as a set of strategies, these are things that we can utilize in conjunction, either by themselves or in conjunction with other things, either other TSMO strategies, ITS strategies, things that we do in project development, things that we are implementing through traffic operations, things that we are doing through our asset program or maintenance. And these are things that help us when we're looking at providing safe, efficient travel. Now, I'm going to ask a little bit of a question. So when we talk about performance, okay, and we talk about performance of our system, when we talk about that from a traffic operations perspective or from any other perspective, we talk about system performance, what type of stuff are we talking about? I'll say I have time. What was that? Level of service, okay, which deals with delay, okay, congestion. What else? Safety. Hey, look at that. Thanks. I didn't plant that, but Mike is a good helper for me there. So one of the things that I want to point out that when we look at TSMO in particular, a lot of times what we're going to be looking at are ways that we can optimize the use of the existing system. But when we look at optimization, that doesn't mean that we're optimizing for one vehicle mode. So if anybody was across the way talking about complete streets, highways, roads, and highways a few moments ago, we're talking about all users. And so when we think about TSMO, it's not about how many cars we can get through as quickly as we can necessarily. It might be how we do that and balance what we are doing with the needs of all of the roadway users. And so TSMO has strategies that will help us do those types of things, improving safety while addressing capacity challenges and things like that as well. So one of the things I do want to point out before I leave this slide, existing and planned transportation infrastructure, okay? And so when we think about TSMO, a lot of times we're looking at the traditionally built environment. However, when we do new construction projects, when we do projects in project development, there are opportunities to implement the strategies that we'll talk about to enhance what it is that we're doing out there at modifying the built environment as well. So more specifically, when we think about TSMO, we're talking about a program, and this presentation is about our TSMO program plan, which we've been developing, but improving the performance of the existing system, and we're using primarily, and when we're talking about TSMO, we're using technological methods. And so as we talk about this conference being centered on and focused on innovation and how we utilize those innovations to improve service for our customers, whatever that may mean in a particular project or context. When we think about TSMO, we're looking at a program to improve performance. So I mentioned, that I kind of think of TSMO as a toolbox of things, but when we think about TSMO as a project concept, it's a tool in the box. It's not necessarily the only tool you have, and it helps us get the most out of the investments we've already made. So when we think about the built environment, and if anybody in here's read the TAMP, you know that the assets that KYTC has built, owned, and maintained are worth billions of dollars. And when we think about all of those investments that have come before, these types of things, whether they're new TSMO things, they're typical or traditional ITS, they're traffic operations type things, these are helping us get the most out of these investments, looking at our project goals and objectives. All right, so when we think about it from that perspective, what isn't TSMO? Okay, so TSMO is not a silver bullet. It's when we talk about this, it's not, hey, we have this super complex problem that has been affecting a community for years, and we're going to go in there and we're going to apply TSMO, and all of a sudden everything is going to be fantastic. Okay, it's not a silver bullet. There's not a tool in that box that addresses every single thing. But when we look at it, there are things in here that help us enhance the utility of the system. Not a replacement for all future capacity projects. And so I want to make a point here that as we talk about TSMO being able to improve capacity, being able to look at different strategies in order to improve the performance, that doesn't mean that we won't have areas where increased capacity is necessary, through more traditional means. What it does mean is that there are opportunities out there to perhaps improve the existing system, and and the way that that combines with our traditional thinking on how to improve capacity helps us to make different investments that helps us kind of realize the full portfolio of where we're trying to get to. Not a solution for every project. So, if you've ever heard anybody describe a new thing, it's the best thing since, what are some of the things people say? The best thing since the what?
Sliced bread.
Sliced bread. Who really likes sliced bread? I'm a diabetic, but I love sliced bread. So I'll just say that when you look at this, okay, if you go through and you evaluate TSMO for your project's goals and objectives, it may not be something that fits well with what you're trying to do. It may not be a solution for you, but it very well might be. And in order for you to evaluate that through the process, when you're looking at developing your project, you're going to need to know some of the things that we're getting ready to talk about. And that's what the TSMO program plan is really trying to help you do. It's trying to get us information in the hands of the practitioners so that we can make the best decisions that we can with that knowledge. So when we look at a strategic approach, and I'll say for anybody that's been working on our Eastern Kentucky flood relief team, we've talked about there, being obviously such a big challenge. So the one bite of the elephant at a time is something that's come up. Now we've got a lot of people eating that product, so we're working on the elephant in a lot of different areas. But when we talk about from a strategic approach for TSMO, one bite at a time there's foundational pieces that we'll talk about and how we build upon that to ensure that we're able to get these things not only known about, but implemented successfully. So I want to just take a moment and make some acknowledgements. These are in no particular order, but we had a lot of people within KYTC and outside of KYTC, in addition to our consultant partners, helping us as we were building this TSMO program document. One of the things that I'll say, we've been talking a lot about different challenges that we have within transportation. And one of those challenges is that, there's a lot of turnover within our industry right now, not only within our agency, but just within our industry in general. And so there's a lot of folks that are listed on this list that are either no longer in the jobs that they started with, no longer with the agency that they started with, or soon to leave the agency that they started with. So, as we go through and we look to implement this document, it's going to be exciting to bring new stakeholders into the fold, because ultimately these people are pretty passionate about what we've done here. And that's, again, building that foundation for actually going out and doing something with this document. So when you think about TSMO and TSMO program plans, Federal Highway Administration has put out a lot of resources about this. And the strategic plan for the Federal Highway Administration has a lot of great information in it, but it's not, well, I'll just be honest, it's not the most consumable document. There's a lot of things in there that are really great if you can make it to it and find it and figure out from an organizational perspective. But when you think about program planning, you have a strategic element, you have a programmatic element, you have a tactical element. So within KYTC, we have like an operational plan that builds from the strategic plan that I showed you and looks at, strategies and goals and tactics, and these types of items for TSMO function in much the same way. So when we look at it from KYTC's perspective, I'm going to spend a few minutes here. I showed you earlier our strategic plan. So when we looked at the TSMO program plan, we wanted that to have strong strategic alignment. And the reason for that is that as we go through at KYTC, trying to meet the needs of our customers, trying to exceed their expectations, and ultimately trying to provide a safe system for them to travel on, those things are prevalent within our strategic plan. And as we're going through and making these types of documents that are looking at other particular programs, they need to have good strategic alignment. So when we built a strategic vision and strategic objectives for our TSMO plan, they were built on the cabinet strategic plan to ensure that we're not trying to accomplish something that's kind of outside of the main goals and vision of KYTC as we're doing that. So the next portion of that then is a business plan. And when you look at business planning, that's a more specific way that you accomplish those goals, those strategic goals and objectives. And we're going to crawl into that just a little bit. And then the last part of that is an implementation plan. And how do you actually take those other two elements and turn them into action? And, if you've ever heard me talk about other planning documents that the cabinet has, whether that be our strategic highway safety plan or anything like that, that for me, we don't develop these plans because, we have to have one, we want to check a box. We develop these plans because we want to put them into action and use them to help people. And so when we look at TSMO specifically as an opportunity, it's in that implementation where we're really going to get out there and actually do the things that help folks. Now, I'm going to ask if anybody has any thoughts on how TSMO might be able to help our customers. So for those of you who are familiar with some of the things, I want to just get some general audience feedback here. What are some of the things that we might do in a TSMO program that might help us help others?
Help provide a more reliable system that you can anticipate your commute time.
Travel time reliability. I like it. What else?
Advanced notifications.
advanced notifications. Now, I can have this discussion with Zach in his office, but if anybody else would like to participate, you're more than welcome.
Alternative routing.
Alternative routing. So why might we need to do alternative routing? Incident management. That's an excellent example. What else? Got to hit the bottom of the well. Okay. So let's think about how TSMO might help align with the strategic plan. So Jeff just mentioned incident routing, for instance, and that's something that I'm going to hit a little bit later in the presentation. But when we look at our goal of providing or promoting safety in all decision making, one of the things that we talk about, advanced traveler notice, the reason why you do that is because we want people to understand what's ahead of them on the roadway, okay? And the reason for that is that every piece of information that a traveler has, and again, think about that from the perspective of a driver or a commercial driver, somebody who's bicycling, a pedestrian, anybody who's using the system, the more information they have about what's going on ahead of them in their journey, the more easily they're going to make that journey, the safer that journey is going to be. We'll talk about that in a second as well. So we think about from a programmatic standpoint, transportation cabinet is a big place, and a state DOT is a complex organization. And so this is this is an eye chart, but I really just want to point out Federal Highway did a great job here when they were talking about how to implement TSMO of putting together and what that might look like at a state DOT. And so this is kind of a jumping off point for how we can utilize these types of things in different pieces and parts of the transportation cabinet. So I'll give you an example. One of the things as I've worked either in PD&P or traffic operations throughout the years that may have happened in certain circumstances is, we would go out and do a project development project, and as we were doing that, we would replace like signal controllers, and we would replace detection, and we would place some advanced technologies within these new projects because there was opportunity there to do that would allow us future functionality through the system. Well, one of the challenges that we've had is that those things would be useful in a lot of places where we're not doing projects, because when you have a new project, there are TSMO opportunities for certain, but there's definitely opportunities in places where we're not addressing capacity through other more traditional manners. And so when we think about TSMO, it's not only a partnership with project development, it's a partnership, with traffic operations. It's a partnership with the Office of Highway Safety in the incident management area, with our transportation operations centers and Trimark here in Louisville. There's a lot of opportunity throughout the entirety of our organization and to work with our partners to implement TSMO and TSMO strategies for the benefit of the people who travel our roadways every day. And so when you look at the opportunities that we might have, in traffic operations, for instance, we might be looking at doing advanced detection so that we can do automated traffic signal performance measures. We might be looking at opportunities to do automatic signal timing changes based on incidents. We recently had a meeting in one of our communities about that. There's a lot of opportunity out there to utilize these concepts that we're getting ready to talk about to meet those goals and objectives that we're desperately out there trying to help communities meet, that we're working toward every day. So when we think about this TSMO business plan, ultimately what we're trying to get at is, how do we support our people? How do we support our partners in understanding these strategies, understanding the things that go into the TSMO toolbox, to be able to utilize them in a way that that supports their particular project's goals and objectives. I'm really excited because I worked a lot with Chris on this project. He's been frowning a whole lot during the presentation, and he just started to smile. So I don't know if that's the first decent thing I said or what happened there, but I'm just really appreciative for that feedback, Chris. So you might have heard Secretary Gray say this. I don't think it's a Secretary Gray original, but one of the things that he told me early on in his tenure I gave him a copy of our strategic highway safety plan, which we had just finished up. And, he said, I really like a good plan because the journey is the safest when the roadmap is the clearest. And he said, a good plan is like a roadmap. And so when we look at what it is that we're doing here, we're trying to provide those types of roadmap elements such that people understand how they get from where they are today to meeting their project's goals and objectives through the use of TSMO or any of the other cabinet strategies that we have. So I'm going to talk through a few different things today, and I do have a few eye charts, but I'm going to kind of just talk through them. But we have these three areas. So we have a TSMO foundation. We have a slide then for the TSMO and capital program interaction, and then some other business processes such as asset management and things where we can look at TSMO. So when we think about the foundation of TSMO, the first part is establishing the program. Okay, and people ask me all the time, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that there's going to be a KYTC TSMO office? Does that mean that there's going to be a division of TSMO? Does that mean that, what exactly does that mean? And so at KYTC, we are looking, and I'm the current champion of this. And like I said, I worked a ton with Steve DeWitt and all of those other stakeholders as we were doing this. But the first part of this is that we're going to build champions within each one of these cabinet areas. And the reason for that is that TSMO is not, we don't want it to become its own silo, okay? And so you hear when people ask about challenges in government, who in here has heard that siloing can be a challenge within state government? Anybody heard that? Okay, just checking to make sure you all are still awake. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate your acknowledgement back there. So when we look at this from a foundational standpoint, we want to encourage those champions naturally from within our existing cabinet functional areas. And so, a lot of this TSMO foundational prep we've done as a part of this project to establish this or to build this program plan. So the next part that we're currently working on and we've identified a lot of resources for are the TSMO training program and ongoing training. So when you think about TSMO, I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of turnover in our industry. And so a lot of these are new and emerging concepts, and they're things that are constantly being updated and changed as we get new detection, new data, new technology. And so training, and not only like baseline training, like what's a TSMO and things like that, but ongoing training so that people can stay at the front edge of those types of technologies and implementations are really important. And then TSMO outreach and awareness. So I was excited. I think this is the third time I've given a presentation like this in the last several months. And I have seen, less and less hands every time on, who's never heard of TSMO or anything like that. And so that's exciting to me because that means that as we go through and we do various types of outreach, that the message is getting out. But after we've kind of done that for our internal community and our partner community, that's when you go out there and you start looking to do that in the public. Because a lot of times when you have new things, the public, if it's something that they don't understand or something that they've never heard of, that can be a challenge to implement as a solution, just because it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand it. And a lot of times what that means is that we've not gotten through to them with these types of communications. And so it's really important that we look at not only internal education, but also outreach and awareness. And so the last thing that I'll talk about, and this is a big strategic alignment for us, is that, TSMO is very interesting from a technological standpoint. And so we want to utilize that as we are doing recruiting, as we're doing team building, as we are doing diversity and inclusion exercises. And we want to make sure that TSMO is a part of those conversations, because this is a new and developing area within transportation that people do find interesting. So when we look at a TSMO training program, the first thing that we're going to do is kind of a TSMO 101, which is going to be the building block that's going to be pretty pretty basic for general audiences. So no matter where you work within the transportation industry, this training will explain to you what TSMO is, how it integrates, and ultimately what part you may play as in your current role or in a future role. We also have other opportunities nationally to look at TSMO training. We actually have someone in here who's going to be going to the National Operations Academy here shortly, going to be participating in that. The National Operations Center of Excellence through AASHTO is another great opportunity to learn about TSMO. Unfortunately, the CTSO AASHTO group is actually meeting this week in Arizona, so the cabinet is not participating in that fully because we're all here doing partnership activities. And so, but these are excellent opportunities, and we're also looking at training opportunities for other people through other training outlets that we have. So when we think about TSMO within the capital program, you know, there's a lot of opportunity here. Okay, and so we're going to be looking at what does it look like in the planning process to talk about TSMO. When we think about our new projects and when we think about what potential solutions may be out there, we want to look at TSMO as technological solutions as either independent utility or as a portion of a project alternative. And that's really important because, as everyone here knows, does anybody in here, if you work for the cabinet or anywhere else, have enough, you know, resources, funding, people to meet all of the known needs that you have? No? Okay. So just wanted to check. And, you know, so as we look at this, if there are ways that we can utilize TSMO to meet some of these needs, you know, there are other opportunities out there where TSMO is not a good solution. And so we want to make these investments so that we can get as many needs taken care of as possible. So looking at that, you may have heard different members of the State Highway Engineer's Office, Tracy Novacek, myself, John Moore, talk about performance measures and performance management over the last several years. And when you look at TSMO, we need to look at performance measures. A lot of times people will be looking at only traditional things like capacity, delay, and things like that. But what was our other performance measure that Mike contributed at the end before? What was that other one? Safety. Okay, so that's never like another performance measure to me. That's top of my list. And so as we go through and look, we want to make sure that what we're measuring is representative of the results that we want to get, that we are meeting our project's goals and objectives, that we are meeting our program's goals and objectives through measuring those things. We want to define a programming process for TSMO, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some funds that are in the 6-year plan related to TSMO and how we might go about using some of those. And then ultimately, we want to integrate TSMO within the entire development process. And again, does that mean that all projects are going to have, quote, TSMO solutions? Absolutely not. What it means is that we have done the work to provide people making those decisions with the knowledge of those tools such that they are able to utilize them when they are the best solution, when they are appropriate, and when it is an enhancement to where they're trying to get with their project. So when we look at other cabinet programs, talk about like asset management or talk about data. So data is a big deal, right? And when we talk about data, particularly related to TSMO, one of the things that enables us to do a lot of these different TSMO activities is enhanced data. Okay, and that could be anything from probe data to crowdsourced data to traditional data sources to there's a lot of opportunities through data to make decisions and to make operational adjustments that we've not ever had access to before, at least not with the volume and the precision of this type of data, and also the speed and velocity at which it comes in. So when we look at these types of things, these are future opportunities for us to be able to utilize new data sources to do things, honestly, that we've always wanted to do, but never really had that opportunity. So, like I said, there's some TSMO dollars within the 6-year plan. So within each of the years within the biennium, There were $2 million for TSMO type improvements laid out in the various category, and that's in addition to an ITS item that we've had in the 6-year plan, going back several plans, that also includes opportunities to roll TSMO into those sorts of things. And so as we look at, what some of these foundational building blocks are, and how we might invest some of these TSMO dollars, I'm going to go into a couple of potential things going forward here. So who in here has ever heard of automated traffic signal performance measures? Before it was up on the slide, I clicked too soon. Okay, Jared, who's been helping with our accelerated innovation deployment project for ATSPM, raised his hand, so that's good. I'm glad for that. Chris, who helped work on this project, raised his hand, several others. But as we look at automated traffic signal performance measures, you would think about the types of things that we've had access to as we've gone through the previous 50 years of traffic engineering, and the ways that we had to collect data and how time consuming that was, how challenging that was. And now we are able to see in pretty much real time how the signal system is performing, what different things are happening out there, and we are able to, through advanced detection, make adjustments to those in a much more iterative and rapid fashion. And so the advantage and the benefit here is that we are able to evaluate, make change, evaluate, adjust, and do those things iteratively and more quickly. Now, the challenge with that obviously is that with all of that new data and all of those new opportunities, we haven't doubled or tripled the size of our staff that go through and look at those types of things. And so there's opportunities for us to partner not only with our districts and with our central office staff, but with our consultant community, looking at how we can, again, get the most out of the existing system. Now, again, the challenge here is that a lot of this national narrative, when you talk about it, ATSPM, is mostly capacity and delay related. And so we have to be really careful that as we're going through and we're implementing this, we're also looking at safety performance, because we don't want to utilize these types of tools and get out of balance with what our goals and strategic alignment is. And so one of the things that you may have caught on the first slide, KYTC values safety first. So as we do these things, we're going to be having a specific lens looking at safety. So minor infrastructure improvements is one of the other things that we're going to be looking at through the TSMO program. And so this might be focused on situations where making a minor adjustment might really help with meeting a project's goals and objectives, safety, mobility, while pairing that with a technological solution. So if you've ever worked with KYTC, you may have had somebody call and say, hey, we would really love to have a turn lane here, okay? So that's something that has traditionally been very challenging for KYTC to do, because basically it would have to go through the entire project development process. And in some cases that's appropriate, and in some cases you're able to go out there and make those minor adjustments if you had a few dollars to be able to do that. So those are things where we're going to be looking at strategically making those types of investments through this program. So Q monitoring and dynamic signal timing, old habits die hard. So I was taught, when I worked with the research and innovation program for so long, that it's okay to have biases. I just have to announce them. So, I am biased toward wanting to improve safety. I don't think that's a secret to anybody. But as we look at, Q monitoring and dynamic signal timing, one of the things that, we see out there on the system that's a real safety challenge is end of queue crashes. And, why might that be? I'll ask for a little audience participation here. What might be different in the last, say, 10, 15 years than maybe in the previous 20 or 30? Somebody's holding up a cell phone, a bunch of rectangles. Like, is this like, at a concert and we're going to, have our lights on and sway back? No? Okay. So distracted driver, right? And listen, everybody's guilty of being distracted, whether that be, your phone. I certainly hope you're not doing that. But you know, anything that takes your mind off of the road, hands off the wheel, or eyes off the road, you know, that's distracted driving. And in a technological age where there are so many things coming at us from so many different directions, that's a challenge. And so when we look at queue monitoring dynamic signal timing, we're looking at two separate things. The first is notifying people that there are queues ahead, okay? And that's helpful because if you have someone who's out there on the road who maybe isn't paying a ton of attention, maybe they see that message that there's a queue ahead and it's like, hey, maybe I should pay more attention. People have to be able to rely on that information and trust it. I'll ask a question. So how many people in here have ever tried to beat like an advanced warning flasher? You know, you see an advanced warning flasher, you know, stop ahead when this is blinking. You know, I see people that do traffic engineering are laughing. So, you know, people, they have to learn to trust, right? You know, and I can think of one that I drive through regularly where it's flashing, so I'm slowing down, you know, I'm kind of letting my momentum fade, and people are flying by me. They're like, hey, I'm gonna get there, and it's gonna be green, it's gonna be great. And then they're locking up, you know, they're stopping very quickly. They're not utilizing the notice that we gave them, but as people go through those situations and they see the value and benefit, they trust, and you see that people, you know, have a different behavior based on what it is that we've done. And so when we talk about doing stuff like this, it's not only about trying to, you know, lessen those queue times by doing dynamic signal timing in other parts of the system to help us flush. But what it is it's trying to help notify people of things so that we are helping them change that driver behavior. And so it's really, really important as we are looking at those types of things, that we are looking for those opportunities, not only to alleviate the challenge through TSMO, through engineering, but we're also thinking about how people will behave in reference to the information that they've been given and utilizing that to help people make better decisions as they're behind the wheel or as they're traveling on the system, however they might be doing that. So I told you at the beginning that if you didn't escape by the end, that I was going to ask you for something. So I didn't really see anybody leave, and I appreciate that, but now it's too late because you're still here. So what can everybody do to help? I'm really glad you asked. So when we talk about this TSMO program plan, you know, coming in here, it's just a first step. This is a taste. I'm hoping that you leave more interested in TSMO than when you got here. I didn't see anybody fall asleep except for maybe one or two in the back, but that's really okay. I appreciate that. That's a very small number compared to the number that are participating, so I appreciate that. But the point of this is to provide that basic building block. I want you to be interested. I want you to be informed, okay? So as we are rolling out these TSMO training initiatives, as you see these types of things, Federal Highways does a bunch of webinars, NCOE, the National Operations Center of Excellence, does a bunch of webinars. There's a lot of information out there on this. And now when you see that, it's like, what's that? You know, maybe that's something that you might be interested in, depending on the description of that session. But as you see our KYTC TSMO 101 come out, we definitely want you to be in there. We would definitely want you to be looking through this program plan to see what types of opportunities it has for you to help meet your project's goals and objectives or your community's goals and objectives. Be involved. Help us implement this plan. Like I said, we don't write stuff on pieces of paper just to check boxes to say, hey, look, got one. Here it is. Look, there it is. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to implement change through having this information available, through providing these tools, and through giving folks the ability to engage with and interact with them. Help us implement. Be intentional. As you're going through and you're looking at the challenges, again, within your community, within your projects, within your area of influence, if these types of things that I've talked about are things that might help your community, might help you in your particular district, in your area, to help you meet the specific goals and objectives of one project or throughout your entire program, please consider utilizing these TSMO solutions. You can reach out to me. We can talk about those things. I can help vet whether or not these might be a good fit for you. I can provide additional resources. Our consultant team, WSP, has done a fantastic job of helping us gather those resources. So we have lots of places that we can point people to while we're waiting for this training to roll out. So please, please, please be intentional. Consider potential TSMO solutions within your projects to meet those goals and objectives. And with that, I'll take any questions if we've got a few minutes left. And otherwise, I really appreciate everybody being in here and staying awake, both of those. So questions? Yes, sir.
I don't know if this falls under necessarily the TSMO lens, so to speak, but the recent crash we had here in Louisville and in Lexington, more severe crash, but the wrong way interstates. I know that we got the recent grants, $5 million plus to look into that. Is that going to kind of fall under this umbrella, or is that a totally separate issue?
That's a great question. So for the folks online, one of the folks in here asked about wrong way crashes and whether or not technological implementation related to wrong way driving on limited access facility is something that would fall within the TSMO toolbox. And so as we look at, so it was also mentioned KYTC recently won a $5.14 million grant from Federal Highways through the ATC MTD program to address this. And so that's something that we are going to be looking at. Those type of technological solutions will definitely fall within the TSMO umbrella. And as we are, one of the things that we talked about going through that grant process is we implement those both within the Louisville area and the Lexington area, is that we're going to be able to utilize the lessons learned and those types of technological items in other places where they make sense as we